and gentlemen, welcome to Azeroth Daily for the 15th or 16th, depending on where you are, of March 2011. My name is TotalBiscuit, bringing you your daily dose of WoW news and comment. In the headlines today, the MMORPG website, which is conveniently named MMORPG.com, has released a fairly lengthy interview with J.Allen Brack, and this was taken at GDC 2011. He's one of the senior designers of World of Warcraft, and there's a lot of great information about World of Warcraft Cataclysm in here, with some explanations as to a number of different decisions made in the game. Worth having a look at, certainly, and I particularly like discussion about 10 and 25-man gear being on the same level, and a little bit of insight into just how controversial a decision that was, even within the actual team itself. So very illuminating, worth having a look at. There are some contest winners, folks, and this means there's content for you to look at. The first thing is the 2010 Global Writing Contest, and the winner of this goes by the name of Raphael Ahad, that came up with a story entitled Silverhand Ebon Blade. You can read the entire thing using the link in the description below this video. It is quite the read, and it is quite awesome, and there are also some excerpts of the runners-up. Speaking of contests, there is also the Protect Your Account contest, aka Guardian of Accounts, and this image is the winner. It's by a fellow by the name of Marcus, and it is quite frankly fantastic, and you know what? I would pay for that. I really, really would. It seems incredibly effective. With that, it's time for your Daily Blues. It seems that a player called Carmageddon believes that not enough good PvP questions were asked in that particular thread. He does not believe that, since the thread filled up in under 2 hours, it represents the player base properly. So bashiok responds by saying that it sounds like it would certainly represent the player base, and thinks that the determination of whether or not that number represents the player base is entirely arbitrary. Indeed, he's getting a little bit of mocking going on there, which I like. I like that. I think that the original post was rather whiny. It's, oh, it doesn't represent the real players. Oh, God, yeah. And you're one of the real players, Carmageddon, I assume. Well, whatever the case, bashiok goes on to say that they will not answer any of the questions posted in this particular thread, and they recommend that you go through and vote for questions that you would actually like to be answered in the sticky. And there are indeed PvP questions in there, so there you go. I would recommend having a look at that. And always, always vote up the questions that you want to see answered. That's what Ask the Devs is for, folks. Go and do it. You can do it yourselves right now. Right now. Go do it. Go do it. Yes, show some initiative, damn it. Zarhym posts a rather important message for those of you who are creating add-ons, and you might want to read about this, since this is something to do with the way that messages are filtered from add-ons. I don't pretend to understand this at all, but I would strongly recommend that if you are an add-on author of any description, you do go and read this message in its entirety. That would be a very good idea, so go, go, go. Now, the final thread has perhaps the best blue post ever, and the original post is awful. It's by a mage called Balls. Why are you surprised by this? And his post is, unsurprisingly, bollocks. Yes, so many complaints and whining and horrendous stuff, and Blizzard apparently really needs to step up the community quality control because it's getting out of hand. However, the hero, known as Vrakthis, who is a support forum agent, comes up with perhaps the best blue response to anything I've seen ever, and I would recommend that you read the whole thing because it is that damn awesome. There is so much truth in this post. For instance, the fact that nodes are on a first-come, first-served basis. I mean, read this initial complaint. It is absolutely ridiculous. Players stealing resource nodes from others who are fighting the Guardian. Sorry, the Guardian? What? There are no guardians for resource nodes, it just happens to be mobs wandering around in the vicinity. You must answer me these questions 3 before you can have your Saronite. I think not. My lord, why would anyone even believe that that is an issue? The fact that he's actually complaining and saying that Blizzard has to step in against this horrendous behavior. Oh, wow. Yeah, please, please, go, 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 go and read everything that Vrakthis is saying, because it is pure gold. Thank you. Thank you. I have enjoyed that blue post more than any other blue post this year. Go read it. It's awesome. It's in the description below this video. And with that, it's time for your daily grind. My, how many people have asked me to do this quest, and I did eventually. Head over to this NPC in Felwood, and you will gain a line of quests which starts by capturing an imp in a perfumed sack. When you complete all of these quests, you will get access to this one, which involves scaring away 20 imps by using what appears to be some kind of rainbow generator. Yes, it is terrifying, and to make matters even better, if you complete the quest, you will gain a trinket which is in fact a rainbow generator, and you can bother other players with it, although it is on a 10-minute cooldown, so it's not quite as effective as you might hope. Nonetheless, a great quest, and don't even mention double rainbow to me. Just don't do it. And with that, it's time for your weekly feature. Yes, indeed, folks, it is the Achievement Hog. Now, I would have liked to bring you some of the new achievements from the PTR with a focus on some of the instances, but they're a little bit broken right now, and hopefully should be able to get in there for next week's show. Whatever the case, I decided I'd bring you two. One of these is a little tricky, and a lot of people requested I take a look at this, and it's called Bounce, and this is how you do it. What you have to do is you have to jump on this trampoline 20 times without stopping. If you stop, and if you fail to bounce, it will reset it and you have to go do it again. Now, the best way to do this is to zoom all the way out right here and make sure you're always turning around to face the center of this particular trampoline. Now, when you land on the trampoline, you have a fraction of a second to adjust yourself and move before you get thrown up in the air again. So try and move as close to the center as possible. It is a little bit tricky, and occasionally you do get thrown off there, even if it seems like you've got it pretty much perfect. There's a little bit of randomness in there, but if you follow those simple tips, it should be fairly simple for you to gain the Bounce achievement. Now, the next one goes by the name of Northern Exposure. Now, this is a smaller achievement. There is a much more intense achievement called Frostbitten, and that is for crazy people. Northern Exposure is certainly possible to do, particularly bearing in mind that not a lot of people are in Northrend now. It requires you to kill a very rare spawn. Now, finding these rare spawns can be a little bit tricky. However, if you use a mod called NPC Scan, I provided the link in the description below this video, then this will make matters a little bit easier. Now, the best thing you can do is to go check out some maps for where these rare spawns actually are. Some of them appear in several places, some of them decide to patrol around, which is rather irritating, but this website that I've put in the description below this video has some great maps for it. Now, what you should do is start off perhaps in Borean Tundra and then start flying around Northrend, going the most logical route that you can in order to try and find some of these NPCs. Now, NPC Scan will automatically pick one up if you get within range, and as you can see right here, I did manage to find one and take it down. That will get you the Northern Exposure achievement, and this took me probably about 40 minutes, and I think you can maybe check out Northrend in its entirety over the course of an hour. If you're looking to get the Frostbitten achievement, well, good frickin' luck, because that requires you to kill all of the rare spawns in Northrend, which is an unbelievably difficult task. But feel free, if you're feeling crazy, just don't expect me to make a video of it. There's also one of these in Outlands as well, and chances are I will show you that in a future episode. But there you go, folks. That is how you get hold, in a fairly easy manner anyway, of the Northern Exposure achievement. And with that, it's time for the mailbox. This one comes in from Anonymous, who says, "Hey TB, I recently got back into playing my Paladin, joined a really nice raiding guild. We've cleared out everything currently apart from Alakir and Nefarian. However, we spent about 3.5 hours last night on Nefarian, and the problem is that Blizzard seemed to make some raid bosses, particularly Nefarian, too hard. Put it this way, we only managed to get to the second phase, and we had most of our 10-man team in full epics. However, I do understand this is a controversial matter, as Blizzard don't want things to become easy, but I do believe certain guilds and pugs are being put off by the current raid content. I believe normal raid should cause on average a 50% chance of wipe if you know tactics, and heroic around 75%. What are your thoughts on this? Am I being unreasonable?" You kind of are, yeah, because you're talking about the end boss of a dungeon, and you are concerned as to whether or not the difficulty is putting off puggers. We are in the first tier of raiding of this expansion. Do you think the last boss of a dungeon should be puggable? Because I don't. I don't believe it should be that way at all. Nefarian is a difficult encounter, even on normal mode. He is the last boss of a dungeon. He's supposed to be hard. He is one of the major lore characters. He is supposed to be hard. You're not supposed to be able to wreck this guy. The idea of percentage of chance of wiping is absurd. There's no percentage chance of wiping in encounters like that. There's no luck involved in it. They got rid of all of these luck factors ages ago. It comes down to whether or not you can execute the tactics properly. Knowing the tactics is useless unless you are able to actually execute them properly. That's half of what it is to be a raider. In fact, maybe more than half, the ability to execute that complicated dance in a correct fashion. And sure, normal mode will have some margin for error, but not a huge amount, especially not on an end of dungeon encounter. The idea that, oh, we spent 3.5 hours and somehow that's crazy. We spent a month on Chthon. A month. And that was when you had to farm 20 greater nature protection potions for every single raid, which took a bare minimum of at least an hour, most likely more. And bear in mind the trash that we had to clear in order to get there, which could take upwards of 45 minutes to get there from the Twin Emperor's room. So don't come to me and say that, oh, well, it might be putting off puggers. Good! You shouldn't be raiding in a pug anyway, it's an absurd idea. The whole idea of raiding is that you've got coordination and synergy within your group. How are you going to find that out of a bunch of randoms? Sure, there are some people that have pug success, and I applaud them for that, but really, it's not an optimum way to do it. You should be doing it in a guild with a large, practiced group, and you are. So, don't get so concerned about puggers. If you're going to play the game suboptimally, that's your own problem. If you play the game with broken weapons and complain you don't do enough DPS, then you'd be laughed out of the room as a complete and total fool. But if you try and raid with a pug, which is clearly the inferior way of doing it, and you complain that it's too hard, somehow you get taken seriously? I don't think so. Guys, I decided to raid today and poke out my eyes with a hot fork. Now somehow raiding is really hard because I can't see. Please nerf it for my benefit. No, it is suboptimal to play raids blind. Although I know a few blind people who are probably significantly better than your average pugger. This one comes in from Thazza, who says, there's a matter that's been bugging me for quite some time, which has now resulted in an argument and my resignation from my up until recently current guild. The matter was the cookie cutter spec, or top DPS spec. Our raid leader spoke to me after I logged on, telling me that marksmanship was OP and that I should switch to it. Now, I'm a Beastmaster Hunter, and I love playing as a Beastmaster Hunter, yet I felt that I was being treated as a bad for not being a sheep and flocking to the most OP spec at the time. My argument is, why would Blizzard give us 3 specs if we ended up having to use 1 to be able to play as dictated by the player base? Long story short, believing the rest of the guild, who taught me how to raid with the motto play as your own character and don't let anyone tell you which spec to take, then turned around and delivered the line which was essentially be marksman or GTFO. Now, complaining aside, I left in disgust. This may have been a juvenile response, but I felt it was better than turning an already volatile argument into something more nasty. What do you think about the matter of the so-called cookie cutter spec? Should we be allowed to use whatever spec we want, as long as the player skill makes it raid viable, or am I a noob for not following the crowd and speccing the way everyone else tells me, because of the potential DPS increase for that spec? Well, there's no right or wrong answer to that. It depends entirely on what your guild actually wants. Guilds vary. There are some guilds that are okay with you picking the non-optimal spec. I mean, if you're wanting to do damage, and there is a spec which is clearly superior to the rest of them, then in a serious raiding guild, really you should take that spec, unless you are required to take another spec which might provide some kind of useful utility, and this is particularly applicable within 10-man groups. If marksmanship did 20% more damage than every other hunter spec and you didn't take it, and you guys were trying to do progression raiding, then that to me seems like the wrong thing to do. But that's in a progression-focused raiding guild. There are plenty of other raiding guilds that are not so concerned about that. It doesn't matter how much player skill you have. If you have a spec that does less DPS than another spec, no amount of player skill is going to change that. It's simple mathematics that are not in your favor. Now, this is Blizzard's fault for not balancing this correctly, and I would say that yes, the cookie cutter spec has been a problem for a very long time. But as to whether or not it's going to be a problem for you, it seems to me that you should be either putting up some kind of resistance. I mean, you left the guild at the end of the day, a guild that supposedly told you that everything was totally fine and that you should spec the way that you wanted to. And that seems to me a little bit excessive. I don't see why you should just leave the guild after that. I mean, supposedly the rest of the guild had you back, right? I mean, they've been telling you that everything's been okay, so why leave over one guy? I know he was the raid leader, but was he also the guild leader? Because it seems to me that's the kind of thing you should either take up with your class leader, assuming that you have a class leader in your guild, or one of the other officers and say, oh, look, the rest of the guild told me that this was okay. It's a shame that you should be forced to do that, but I do understand the raid leader's point of view. You're playing suboptimally, and if they're having trouble in terms of DPS, then yeah, he has the right to tell you to switch. Admittedly, if DPS is not a problem and he still tells you to switch anyway, then I think he's overreacting. But bear in mind that some guilds are more strict on that than others, and you should perhaps find a guild that suits your particular desires. I can think of plenty of situations in the past where I've had to spec into things that I didn't want to, Frost being a particular example. Admittedly, it's got better in Cataclysm, but I had to be Frost for over a year, simply because that's what the content required me to do, and picking another spec would have been suboptimal. It's good that at least there's some viability for all specs these days, because there certainly wasn't back then. Okay, folks, that's me done for the day. Thanks a lot for watching Azeroth Daily. Please remember to thumb it up and favourite it if you like it, and thumb it down and write me a strongly worded letter and send it via Angry Carrier Pigeon if you do not. My name's been TotalBiscuit, and I'll see you next time.